even if I'm not always the best in the world at one particular thing, there's a certain group of clients out there who are like, I want to work with the person who's doing things differently because I've already seen that.
From being a director to then starting your journey with Kelford, walk us through how did that get started?
Do I become more of a leader within this organization, or do I try to kind of chart my own course?
Walk us through the process of you getting your first customer.
I, left that company with no clients lined up.
So you said you didn't have any client, you had some money saved up. What kind of a runway did you give yourself? Like, this is the runway I have to try this out, and if it doesn't work, I'll go back.
Maybe a quarter.
For someone who's thinking of starting their services business, they're in that 0 to 1 journey, chasing their moment of fit, service market fit.
Yep.
What would be the single biggest advice you'd give them?
Your next client is connected to your next best client, and they are connected to your next best client. Don't think about that I need to go find my ideal client somewhere over there. You will be led to your ideal client, one client at a time.
Well, Joel, welcome to the show. Super excited to have you here. As I mentioned, you are the first guest of the Service Market Fit Show. Thank you for coming.
Oh, my pleasure. Thanks so much for the invite. I'm excited.
Cool. I think I'll start off by asking you, if you remember, the first time we connected in person, it was when you were at Verb around 2015, and I was running Lead Sift. Our office was on the same building. We were in the third floor. You were probably fifth or sixth. Me and our sales guy, Kevin, we went up and spent some time with you for some customer discovery about what we were doing with Lead Sift. And you were using some tools, so you were giving me the perspective of how a social media manager of a tourism brand would use. So that's when we first connected. I don't know if you remember that.
I do remember, absolutely.
Okay.
I can't believe that's been a decade now.
10 years. That is crazy.
Incredible.
That is crazy.
Yeah.
So take us back to the origin, meaning you were there at Verb. I think you were director of marketing, something.
I was director of, I believe my last title was director of content marketing, which at that point had kind of become the marketing department for the firm. Yeah.
So, and Verb, for the folks that don't know, it's a pretty big agency, at least in the Atlantic Canadian scene. From being a director to then starting your journey with Kelford, walk us through how did that get started?
Absolutely. Yeah. I had a really incredible time at that agency and learned so much. And by the time, I'd come to what I decided was going to be the end of that part of my career, me and one of the owners were kind of the main business development people at the agency. So I learned so much about the process of sales for an agency selling into large organizations with marketing services. And I had gotten to a place in that role where the next step had to be a significant change. It was like, what kind of either leadership position do I want at this organization, or is now the time for me to become my own leader? That really was the question, is do I become more of a leader within this organization, or do I try to kind of chart my own course? And that was a really difficult decision. And I ended up giving, and this is, probably the primary mistake I made at that time. I still appreciate the reasons I did it, but I gave 4 months notice when I resigned there, which is too much. I kind of likened it at the time of kind of being there for your own funeral, but people are talking about, all the ways in which you could have done things a little bit better. And it's like, this is kind of a weird experience. But as kind of that was coming to its conclusion, in that the next step had to be taken, I really spent a lot of time making sure I wasn't accidentally tiptoeing into some sort of competitive environment with my previous employer. I didn't want anything like that. But also I didn't want to just go out and do what I think a lot of people do, which is try to somehow recreate the agency they just worked out. The same service offering, even if it's non-competitive. You're doing the same thing, you're following the same process, and you're kind of trying to attract the same type of client. And I really did want to do something different. So at that moment, I had spent most of my career in agencies. I had done a fairly short stint at Radian 6 at the time, before it got bought by Salesforce, doing product marketing, but I was an agency guy.
Yeah.
And what I noticed in that, speaking of, service market fit, is that I found that there was kind of two problems with the same source. Is that number one, as the agency expert, you start to realize you know more about marketing than your clients, or
Yes.
you know more about the client's marketing than they do on one side. So from an ownership perspective, it seems a little strange that the client doesn't have that marketing leadership internally. And then on the other side, being in the agency, kind of looking around at all the work we're doing, going, I don't know that we're adding as much value to all of these tasks that we're doing than we possibly could. There seemed like this gap that there was room for client-side marketing expertise while still having support from agencies. So we went out with this idea of we're going to help organizations do better in-house marketing. Not to say get rid of your agency, but have your agency do what they're best at while you do what you're best at, which should be kind of creating that institutional knowledge, that long-term thinking of the founding principles of this organization. How are they applying today to the marketing side of the organization? So that's where it started, is I went out with this idea that we were going to help organizations build and maintain and grow their in-house marketing, not just capability, but their capacity, help them build teams. We did quite a bit of like helping people hire and find marketing resources so that they could grow things internally. So that's the origin story of the business. I wanted to do my own thing, and that was the gap I had kind of identified at the time.
Interesting. So now that you identified this gap, what time period are we talking about? 2017?
This is 2017. Yeah.
Okay. And you give your 4 months notice and you go. Walk us through the process of you getting your first customer. Did you have already one lined up? Like, walk us through. I
did. And again, this is like, I don't know if this is quote unquote the right way to do things, but I felt so sensitive to the fact that I went out with nothing. I left that company with no clients lined up. I didn't want to ever. It was scary, but I didn't want to ever feel like I was running my own business on my employer's time. Totally. That is something that I felt very strongly about.
Sure.
So I was like, I want to be unimpeachable in this kind of, in going out and doing my own thing. So May 1st, 2017, nothing. A little bit of money in the bank, probably not as much as I should have had. And I planned to take the month off. I was just going to, it was a stressful, few years doing a lot of traveling. I was on the road for 2 or 3 weeks out of the month for many months at a time. I thought I was going to take the whole month off. 4 days in, I get a call from a marketing consultant that I had actually worked with back at Radian 6, and he said, I've got a client. Or maybe it wasn't a client of his. I think he just had met this person, and they need marketing support, and they need someone who's got a little bit of like tourism background. Do you want to meet them? A couple days after that, we had a signed contract, and then a couple days after that, we were off to the races, and we were busy. A huge portion of this is luck. I can't take credit for any of this, but we were busy from moment one with client work. In fact, I had hoped to have a little bit more time before things really kicked off. But within that first week, we were sending contracts out. That's awesome.
That is awesome. So now I have some follow-up questions. But so you said you didn't have any client. You had some money saved up. What kind of a runway did you give yourself, saying, this is the money in bank I have, and like this is the runway I have to try this out, and if it doesn't work, I'll go back to doing something else?
It wasn't super formal. I'd say, I had really thought I would have enough money to take a month off, and then if I had someone kind of starting to pay the bills a month or so later, it would have been fine. We're talking like maybe a quarter.
A quarter's runway, and you pull the trigger. Okay, very interesting. So you get your first customer within the first week, and sort of chanced. Like, how did they know that you have started your consulting business?
That's an excellent question. I think there had just been, part of that is being in a town like Halifax, where the marketing community is not small by any stretch. There's a lot of marketers here, but it's pretty well connected. People know what everyone else is up to. So I think I am sure what had happened was I had just mentioned to either this person or someone they knew that I was going out on my own, and I was I was a known quantity in the marketing world in Halifax at the time. People knew what I was up to, and they certainly knew what the agency I was working at was up to. It was, it was a fairly high profile agency. So when someone like me goes off and does their own thing, people talk a little bit. So I think that's really where it started, was people knew I was available, and then, they started to potentially make those connections of, oh, I know someone who's doing, exactly this. Yeah.
So the first one was an inbound. They heard of you, they knew you, and they realized that you were off doing your own. They reached out. So that's great. You didn't really plan for it. You were planning to take a vacation, which I guess never happened at that time.
Exactly.
So then tell us a little bit more about what are some tactics or channels that you used after that to bring in your next 2 to 5 clients?
LinkedIn, as much as I think people have rightly been frustrated by it, certainly in the last year or so, but it is, it remains the primary channel, I think, for consultants to be able to get their messaging in front of potential clients. So my memory of this is a little hazy, but I'm quite confident it was LinkedIn, for a time there. And we had an Instagram account for our company for a little while. I think that was, we eventually kind of, sunsetted that account. But I would say that the primary channel outbound was LinkedIn. We were doing a lot of networking at the time, pre-pandemic. Of course, we were meeting, going to as many coffee meetings as we possibly could, being very available for time and connections. And then there was a decent amount of outbound messaging to connections that we thought might have marketing needs. So I would say it was that at the time. Since 2020, our newsletter has become by far the primary channel through which we connect with people.
I have a lot of questions for the newsletter. I did some research, so we're going to come to that. So you start off, LinkedIn is a channel. You did networking, meaning physically you are meeting people for coffee, and these are people within your network.
Correct, and I think a big part of that is because I had worked at Radian 6, which was, for anyone who doesn't know, that's all part of Salesforce now. But at the time, it was really a great way to kind of visualize your connections through social media, and so many people at Radian 6 were on LinkedIn that my network, back when those tools existed where you could visualize your whole LinkedIn network and see like the clusters, the Radian 6 kind of blob or a cluster was enormous. So I think that was a big part of that is when I wanted to grab coffee with someone, there were a lot of people, that I could have, met up with, and just following other groups. It was an easier lift at that time to kind of visualize your connections and see who you might be able to connect with.
And from the time when you started in 2017 to now in 2025, has your ideal customer profile changed, or has it still sort of remained the same?
Psychographically, it's still quite the same. We have a vibe fit with a certain type of client that has remained consistent. And I can get a little bit into that, but the actual who this client is has changed dramatically. Over time. I even like to think about our service business like it's a product, like we have versions. And, we're probably on version 6 or 7 right now. Over the years, we've been doing this for 8 years now. I think there's been almost yearly a refinement, a version change. And so it started with, we wanted to work with big organizations. We wanted teams. We wanted, a lot of capacity internally to do a lot of things. Now, over time, and definitely, post the beginning of the pandemic, we realized we do not thrive when there is a separation between what we do and the leadership of the organization. So we need to talk to the entrepreneur who started the business or who currently runs it to do our work as good as we can and as satisfyingly as we can. Maybe we can do it without that, but we wouldn't enjoy doing it without that.
Interesting.
So sometimes the organizations have gotten smaller as a requirement to have that, and sometimes the large organizations have just changed what type of organization that was.
Okay.
But that's been the big change in our ICP right now is like the entrepreneur who is leading the organization is who we're looking to work with.
Entrepreneur meaning you're looking basically at the CEO and the founder of this company?
Correct, yeah.
And are these tech companies that you're selling into?
I would say that occasionally. The most common type of client we work with is B2B service providers. That's
B2B. Okay.
That's our most common cohort, yeah.
And is there a geographical fit to this, Joel? Like, are you focusing only on people in Atlantic Canada, or doesn't really matter?
I'd say like everyone else in Canada right now, we're putting a fairly Canadian lens on things. But no, Atlanta, Canada is of course where the company founded. It's where a large part of our network was. So we did pick up, a decent number of clients there. But there was a time actually not that long ago where we had no clients in Atlanta, Canada. And we were only in Ontario, the US, and a little bit in Europe. So we like to think we work from Halifax, but we work all over the world. That's how we conceptualize it. Yeah.
Fair enough. Yeah. So now, you've started, you've gotten some customers, you're doing your networking, you're doing LinkedIn, getting customers. When did you realize, as the founder of this business, that you have reached service market fit? What I mean by that is, the messaging and the process is resonating. The ICP is being consistent. Leads are sort of starting to come in organically. There's more predictability in the pipeline. There's more market pull. When did that happen?
I've been thinking about this question a bit before we talked, and I think when you've hit it, because things switch from feeling like they're pushing something uphill to feeling like something is falling downhill, and
100%.
It goes in and out because of course the market changes. You can have service market fit, but if the market changes, you no longer fit.
100%. So for you, when did you realize? Like, what time? Like, was it the first year, for 6 months? You're like, you know what, we got this.
We hit service market fit by, I'd say, July 2017. It felt like we felt like we couldn't lose. Clients were just coming. We were getting more and more projects. 2018. We ended up with some very high profile clients and some very large projects that were not a good personality fit. So I think that might be a little spin on the service market fit, is I do think there's a third component.
Interesting.
You can design a service offering that fits the market perfectly, but what if it doesn't fit you? And I think that is something that can sometimes get lost, is you can feel like you're still pushing the boulder uphill, right? Because you don't enjoy the type of work that your service market fit has identified. And we got into that kind of that trap a little bit in 2018, that we ended up acquiring all of these clients, different types of clients, different types of organizations, ones that were, names that everyone would recognize. And to some extent we were miserable. So we definitely felt like we hit service market fit in 2018. Then 2019 was a banner year for us. Again, we had that brief feeling like we can't lose. Everything is, is going our way. And then the pandemic hit. And April, May of 2020, we effectively had no clients. Every single project, because we were working with these big organizations, and they just hit pause on everything. Right. There was too much uncertainty. There was, of course, working from home versus working from the office. How do you manage an outside marketing vendor when you're not even in the office every day? You know, we had clients who had not used Zoom before, which is kind of crazy to think about, but there were people that existed at that time.
100%.
That weren't doing that. So we went through kind of this 2-month period where we're like, well, that's it. And is this ever coming back? And we had to reinvent, I'd say, the service market fit after that time. And that is where we got really focused on, it has to be entrepreneurs. We can't do this working through layers of management, working with the director of, the communications department, who's got other priorities beyond the quality of the marketing, for instance, or the customers they're attracting.
Interesting. So let me ask you this question, Joel. So super excited, super happy for you to realize that within a couple months, you realized. So May you started, by July you realized you had a abundance of demand for your services and you couldn't lose. So that's great, which doesn't happen to a lot of people. Especially, I like to think a marketing agency or services, there is a lot of them. What do you think is the reason that your business attracted more people than others that are vying for attention or like trying to get that?
I think it's the same thing that continues to allow us to carve out a space in a crowded market is I think this has a lot to do with my personal upbringing and my personal life experience. It doesn't bother me when I'm saying something and everyone else is saying something else. I'm comfortable believing I'm right and the crowd is wrong.
Right.
And I think in marketing, that's an absolutely vital
100%.
skill to develop. But I think a lot of people, especially marketers of all people, feel like they have to do what the cool agency is doing, or they have to do the new trend, or if they're not jumping on the new thing that their clients are talking about, they're falling behind. And I think that's all a trap. That's business camouflage, is what I say often in the newsletter. Running your business to look like other businesses in your category is blending in, which is the opposite of marketing. You want to stand out. And I've always been comfortable standing out from the rest of the crowd. And I think even if I'm not always the best in the world at one particular thing, there's a certain group of clients out there who are like, I want to work with the person who's doing things differently because I've already seen that. I've already seen what everyone else is doing. I don't need just another person. So I think that's the answer, is like, yes, marketing is a commodity, just like salt is a commodity. But I have spent a lot of money on fancy salt before. You know, if it were different, if they had an interesting process, if they made me a promise that I thought they could keep, then I think commoditization is a choice.
Interesting.
And so is standing out.
So speaking of standing out, you have this newsletter. I believe it's a daily newsletter.
Yeah.
And from one of the podcast interviews that I was listening, video interviews, you talked about that it started off because you were sending emails to your brother with long form about marketing topics. Yeah. Tell me more. I mean, is your brother in marketing? Why are you sharing marketing topics with your brother? And how did that translate into creating a daily newsletter and that being one of your top channels now?
Yeah, well, yes, my brother is in the marketing field. He's a web developer. He and his wife run a web development company called Covet, covet.dev. They're amazing, and we share. I will never speak for him and say he agrees with me on all of my crazy ideas, but we share a significant overlap, I'd say, in the way we think about the world. So what would happen is it's 2020. Maybe things were slow for a bit, or, the world is kind of, in flux. And I'm thinking about these marketing concepts, or I'm hearing about brands that everyone's talking about this amazing advertising campaign. And I do a little, I can't help myself. I do a little Googling and go, okay, this company spent $100 million on advertising this year. Their revenue is $60 million. Yeah, cool. Everyone's looking at the ads and talking about a massive success, but how is nobody talking about the fact that, to spend $100 to get 60 back, anyone could do that.
Right.
I'm not impressed.
Right.
So I would kind of send him these long-winded rants about, different ideas or things that were bothering me. And then eventually, I think, as a favor to me and also a favor to himself, he's like, maybe you publish these and other people can read them. But it was really kind of this, I can't stop thinking about this. I need to articulate it. And that was how the newsletter got going.
And I think you mentioned in that interview that you read a book from someone who get out of the hourly mindset and stuff like that is to start creating a newsletter.
Yeah. Jonathan Stark. He has a book. He has a book called Hourly Billing is Nuts that I haven't read. I got attracted to him via podcast and his daily newsletter. So yeah, he is really, I don't know that he invented the concept, but he certainly popularized the idea that it's actually easier to write every day than it is to write once a week or every few weeks. If you keep the tap open, you know, the momentum is there. If you start and stop, you feel like you have to get it going every time.
Right. How big is your newsletter subscription list right now?
Tiny. Compared to, I think, what a lot of people think. We're in the hundreds. I have hundreds of subscribers, not thousands, not tens of thousands. Okay. And yet, this is like, I get excited talking about this because I hope someone out there goes, oh my God, you don't have to have 10,000 subscribers. It's true.
Yes.
Think about it this way. For our business, there's 2 of us in our business. How many clients would we need to have in a year to have a good year? It's like a dozens, couple dozen.
Yeah, 10 to 12. Yeah, 10 to 12 should be good. Yeah.
So how many people need to be aware of you to get 10 to 12 clients? You start doing that math and you're talking about, at the most, thousands of people would need to know who we are to get a dozen clients in a year. Yeah. If I have a couple hundred people who read my stuff every week and some subset of them are reading my stuff every day, you don't need that much for that to become enough clients. So I'm constantly telling people how small my newsletter list is to make them feel like this is not about becoming famous. This is about having like the minimum viable popularity you need to keep the business running and to keep doing what you do. So my newsletter is minimum viable popularity. And it's enough. And it's enough that I love doing it, but I'm not scared to hit publish every day either.
And would you say from a newsletter perspective, would majority of the people that are subscribers to your newsletter are potential customers, like a good ICP fit people, or do you have others who are just who are interested in marketing topics and stuff like that?
It's definitely the majority are within the ICP.
Interesting.
You'd have to be my type of person to subscribe for long, I think. Right. You know, it's not going to give you that general purpose. You know, lots of people have great newsletters out there that are like, you know, the hits of the week, the current trends, even some analysis of what's going on in the world right now. Yeah. That's not me. Right. My stuff is, you know, what we used to call evergreen. It's not about today. It's about the future and the past. I'm not so much worried about what is the hot thing today. That's not my concern. I am worried about what is going to be the situation 5 years from now.
Right.
But I'm less interested in that analysis of the day-to-day.
Do you repurpose that thought point of view that you publish on a newsletter on LinkedIn videos or other channels?
Yeah, I like to think of it as, instead of repurposing a piece of content, I like to think of it as my favorite short story. I'm sorry for a very brief digression. My favorite short story ends with this idea that a fragment of something gives you the picture of the whole thing. Like, if you see a piece of a painting, you in some way are experiencing the whole painting. Like, at the detail level, you're getting the feel of the big picture, even if you only see a small piece. That's how I like to think about it, is I'm not repurposing something I wrote. I'm taking that idea it was about and implementing it or creating something in a new way over here. I don't like the idea of, you know, how should I say this? I think it's easy to think you just have to create one big idea and then it's all about just getting it out into the world. I think that was true. But when all content is available at the push of a button, I think it's more about showing that you can actually generate novel information. I think that's the current struggle, is instead of repurpose content, it's like, take the idea and demonstrate it to people in a new and interesting way, platform to platform. If that makes sense. It's a slightly different angle on it. Yeah.
Totally. No, it makes sense. I guess one question I have for you is, you know, for someone who's thinking of starting their services business, they're in that 0 to 1 journey, chasing their moment of fit, service market fit.
Yeah.
What would be the single biggest advice you'd give them as they go through that journey to help them get to that service market fit moment faster?
Your next client is connected to your next best client, and they are connected to your next best client. Don't think about that I need to go find my ideal client somewhere over there. You will be led to your ideal client, one client at a time. So what I think is your job as a new service provider is to get a client, not to get the perfect client, to get a client. And then that will help you, because now you've got some credibility, to get the next client. Now you've got 5 clients. And then what you do is you look at those 5 clients and go, who do I love working with the most of all these?
Right.
And you say, how do I get more clients like this one? And you look for
Right.
where do they go for information? Where are they going to look for vendors like you? Who do they know in their network? And you let yourself be led on a journey toward your ideal client. That is my philosophy, at least, and other people have different philosophies. But it's not about hunting. It's about
right.
Mary Wells Lawrence, the advertiser, said you want the nosiness of a detective. That's how I like to think about it. This is an act of discovery and a mystery to be solved.
Do you ever leverage your customers? Like, let's say when you have that first 5 customers, happy clients, do you leverage them to ask them for referrals to their network? Is that a thing, playbook, or?
Historically, no, but I don't have a good reason to do that. And actually, we're working with a sales coach right now that's his job, is to get me to do a better job doing that. I think it's important, and I think you should, and I think I have historically not been very good at that, but I do think it's important. But I think there's a way to do that, of course, that is...
Yes, of course.
That you're helping that person, not asking for a favor. I think there's a way to do that I'm still learning to get better at.
Fair enough. Well, Joel, this is great. I know we went a little over time. Well, 30 minutes, actually. This is perfect. This was super awesome to hear all those insights, some very unique insights you shared, some very real insights, because I think we are starting to give people a look under the hood of how someone gets started with 3 months of runway and within 2 months realizes that they cannot lose. I love it. These are some great pointers, some great stories. Thank you for sharing that. And where can people find you, Joel?
Right now, you can find more about Kelford Inc. at kelfordinc.com, KELFORDINC.com, and you can read the newsletter at labs.kelfordinc.com.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Joel.
Thank you. This was great. Had a lot of fun.